honesty. I thought I was going to lose my wee boy. It's the scariest thing, getting told that your bairn might not make it.
I'm Andrew McIntyre, one of the intensive care consultants at York Hill. I look after the transport and retrieval service, which goes out and picks up children from other hospitals when they're too sick to be looked after there. My particular job is when that happens to children who aren't in Glasgow, and we need to go to whichever hospital they're in and move them back to York Hill without letting them deteriorate or get sicker while we're doing that.
A woman that was in during the procedure come out and says to us that when he was coming in for the anaesthetic that his blood pressure had dropped dramatically. They had to put him on a ventilator and he was in intensive care.
So if a doctor in another hospital thinks they've got a patient that they can't look after where they are because they're too sick, they phone us here in the intensive care unit. We put together a team which has a doctor and 1 or 2 nurses, put together a lot of portable equipment. We phone the ambulance service and they bring an ambulance car to us. We load our equipment into the car and we drive out using blue light sirens if necessary to get to wherever the patient is. So when we get to the hospital where the patient is, we have to take all our gear out of the hospital, carry it through that hospital up to wherever the patient is, which is usually in an intensive care unit or a children's ward. What we do then depends on what kind of condition the patient's in. If the patient has been had a lot of intensive care things done to them already, what we're essentially doing is transferring the patient from the equipment that they're on at that hospital onto our portable equipment and getting them as stable as we can get them, set up as we can get them to be moved back to York Hill. One of the big problems we have is that we need to provide very sophisticated intensive care for very sick children, but using equipment that we can only just carry by hand. So by necessity we're using sort of very lightweight ventilators, we're using a reduced equipment set, and we're using equipment which is rugged enough for us to be able to carry it around, bump it around in and out of cars. The equipment itself is designed to be able to cope with a fair bit of handling, but there's a lot of it. What we're trying to do is get somebody who might already be getting quite complicated care and then move them out to the hospital without letting the level of care they're getting deteriorate at all. In order to get back to York Hill, what we do is get an ambulance from the ambulance service. They send us a normal accident and emergency ambulance. It's the kind of vehicle that would turn up if you had a car crash or if you fell ill at home. We need to then get all our complicated equipment into that ambulance and strapped down and attached, again without interrupting any of the care to the patient.
I was going to come up to York Hill and be told that I never made it. I made it. I made it.
What we do at the moment is manage to provide the intensive care, and we're very good at it. We've been doing it for a long time. But we do make some compromises. First of all, we take a long time to get everything organised and sort of sorted out in the ambulance that we're using. If we had things that came purpose-built for our use, then we'll be able to do it more quickly. And that will have advantages for the patient, and it will certainly have advantages for the hospital that's been looking after the child that we're moving. Ideally, what we would want would be a vehicle and the equipment within it set up specifically for what we do. So you can see from what we're doing that there's a lot of different pieces of equipment, monitors, infusion pumps, ventilators, lots of tubing and wires. These are all things which don't normally live in ambulances. We need an ambulance where that kind of thing can be attached to the walls, where there's power supplies for it, so we're not working on batteries, where all these different bits and pieces we're carrying by hand can actually live in the ambulance in proper sort of storage facilities. So Cameron's a wee 3-year-old boy who collapsed because of a burst appendix and presented to Stirling Royal Infirmary, where he was resuscitated. He had emergency surgery in Stirling to try and get him stable, and then went to their intensive care unit. We've gone back to York Hill. He had a couple of fairly rocky days where we were still having to work quite hard, and then he's got progressively better. So he's now been taken off the ventilator, and he's not very happy yet, but he's getting better, and hopefully he'll be back to normal in the next few days.
Well, everybody knows, eh? It's the one and only York Hill Children's Hospital. There's no other place like it. No other place like it. Saved my wee boy.